I got tricked. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. So I wasn't actually going to review this guitar until I realized I made a mistake. It's a Gibson Les Paul KM. I had bought it out of that collection in Wisconsin. It got some really nice stuff. Overall, I'm happy with my purchases. But just as I was about to clean this one up and list it for sale because it's been refretted, it's not something I want in my collection, I decided to take a closer look at this custom-made plaque, and I realized, that's not what a Les Paul KM should have. The original plaques for these have a much different font. It's like in italics, whereas this is just like big bold print, and then we've got these designs. So now I'm curious, is this actually one of the earlier KMs or not? And somebody just slapped this on here to make it more collectible. And don't get me wrong, this is still a fantastic example. It's got a little bit of flame figuring within it. Hopefully everything else is still original today. We'll tear it apart together just for fun. But if nothing else you learned from this video, make sure you take a close look at things, especially collector-owned guitars, because sometimes they bought it a long time ago before they knew everything, and then they believe what they were told, and then what ends up being the truth is a little bit different. But anyways, while we're here, let's talk the Les Paul KM. We can start with what on earth does KM stand for? Kalamazoo, Michigan. Notice you've got two dots in between the letters. This was a model produced primarily in 1979, however you can find some 80s. And I do believe I've seen at least one 81, and they came in three main colors. You've got your Cherry Sunburst, you've got your Natural, and then the ever so popular Tobacco Sunburst. However, a few ebony ones have shown up onto the market, but those are the only hues that I'm aware of at this point in time. Now, being birthed in the late 70s, this is when the 59 craze is starting to occur. We already had some reissues out there, like the Guitar Trader models and their bootlegs, but this was Kalamazoo's first attempt at trying to get closer to 59 specs. All things considered, they did an absolutely horrendous job, but at least we got the two-piece center seam back, so that's something you can expect on all of the KMs. But for whatever reason, they decided to use the now iconic double cream T-top pickups in these to mimic some of the old bursts that people had removed their covers. This is one of the few Les Paul standard models that actually came stock with mother of pearl inlays. Typically standards get acrylic, so that's not necessarily 59 spec. We still have a big old gigantic 70s boat paddle headstock, so that's not right. By 79, most of the visible layers for the pancake bodies had disappeared. However, I learned about 2 years ago these still do have the hidden maple layer. We'll have to verify that this is on this one. But other than that, the body is one piece, but that's not necessarily special in this time frame. They bursted the back and the neck, which is cool for 70s, but that's not very 59. We've got a volute, and heaven forbid, we've got a three-piece maple neck still. So as far as a reissue, these things are kind of bad. However, as a fun limited edition Norland era model, these are actually starting to become a little bit collectible. And apparently it's the model that caused the whole kerfuffle between Gibson and DiMarzio, and in a roundabout way, they're still fighting it out to this day. But since I've made my last KM videos, we have had the Jeff Beck Yardburst as a stock Gibson model to feature double cream humbuckers. So there's at least one new model to join the ranks. Now, generally speaking, these are not super flamey guitars. Most are pretty plain, but occasionally you can find a figured top. And now we need to talk about this custom-made plaque. Many of the early ones actually shipped with it either in the case or installed right here underneath the tailpiece. I've also seen one installed on the backside of the headstock once, but I think that was just somebody putting stuff on here. So if you're a collector like me and you want one of each color custom-made plaque, just be careful that it's actually the right plaque. So close, but yet so far. Well, that's okay. This one has been refretted already anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. But let's go ahead, throw it onto the workbench, get it cleaned up, and take a look at its individual parts and specs. An hour of cleaning later, and this thing is looking gorgeous. And I've got some good news. I think it did leave the factory with this, because there was one thing I wanted to check. The screws for the particular plate on this one were smaller than the original. But you can see these don't actually fit in this hole. They just push right on in like nails. So this is what my theory is. It left the factory with the custom-made one. Someone took it off, lost it. Somebody bought this guitar exactly as you see it now and thought, hey, what are these screw holes about? Learns about the custom-made plaque plaque, buys a readily available one and slaps it on there. So I don't think someone was trying to necessarily deceive on this one. It was just a bad restoration attempt rather than getting a custom one made that has the exact same font. Your flame top is peeking out a little bit. It's good old 70s clown burst. When I was cleaning this, I just thought instantly, Ace Frehley, just route this for the third humbucker. That would have been really cool if there was like a limited edition run of these that had that, because the double creams are stock. And while cleaning, I also thought about, what about the Buckethead model and the Baritone SG? You gotta remember, those are double white pickups. So we're talking specifically double cream. But these are what they're supposed to be. T-tops, error correct. These are expensive. If you're buying a KM that has the original pickups taken out of it, you should be paying about $1,500 less, because you can only get these pickups from this specific guitar. Now you can find dirty fingers that are double cream like this, such as the GK55 model with that tilt-a-split knob, but as far as T-tops, regular humbuckers go, this is the only model. But I get about 7.5 in the bridge, 7.66 in the neck, and both of them together 3.82. That's exactly where they should be. Now let's take a look at our bridge and tailpiece. Something else that's wrong between a 59 and this, you get the Nashville style. I mean, really all they got right on these is the 2-piece top versus the 3 pieces that the regular standards got. But hey, it was a step in the right direction in the evolution of the 59 reissue. They also erroneously used heavy tailpieces on these. And your anchors actually used the sustain sisters around it. That was a fairly new technology for them at this time, seen as a premium spec, but the bridge does not have that. Here's a look at the current custom-made plaque. This is what you find on like an ES335. They have the designs, and Gibson would use this in the 60s and afterwards to cover over the stop bar tailpiece holes if you were installing a Bigsby on the guitar. As far as your knobs, nothing too special here. 2 volumes, 2 tones, and speed knobs were catching on again at this point in time, so this is an upgraded feature. And our pickguard has nicely yellowed over the years. The pickup bobbins and pickguard were made of different materials. That's why they don't tend to age the same. But the poker chip and switch tip should match fairly closely to your pickguard. You tell me, which version do you like better? No pickguard, no plaque? Plaque, no pickguard? Pickguard, no plaque? Or the whole enchilada? I understand the custom-made plaque is a acquired taste to these, but I like it because it's just a spec you don't find on all of them. If you're interested in being the next owner of this one, we'll run the light along it. You can see some nicks and dings and scratches. A beautiful wood grain, especially in this arm resting area. You can make a couple of faces out of it if you wanted to, but that's what initially drew me to this particular one. It just had some cool wood grain. But another thing that makes me think this probably did leave the factory with that over it, you can see there is a little bit of a fading difference. Now, it doesn't take long for fading to occur, so that's not necessarily a telltale sign, but it gives me at least a little bit more confidence in this one. I can 100% say it's an authentic KM, but as far as the actual tale of what happened here, it seems likely it did, but there's no way to prove it one way or another. Another thing that kind of supports my theory here is if someone was just going to randomly install one of these custom-made plates, wouldn't you think they would center the screws into the designs to make it look a little bit more aesthetically pleasing? The current positionings line up where the original ones would have been. If somebody wanted to restore this with a more proper looking one at some point in time, they could. Hey, we forgot to check out the cavities. I was telling you earlier how a lot of these New Orleans specialties actually do have a pancake layer. And yes, it is true. So maple top, small maple layer before you get to your mahogany body. It's just the visible one that people can see within the body that has been phased out. You can only see this one in the thin binding in the cutaway, and this model does not use that. So unless you're poking around in your pickup cavities, you would never know it was there. And before critically thinking and learning about other things, I always just thought it was like a glue layer, because nobody ever talked about it. That's why I make such a point to talk about it every single time. As far as the rest of the cavities, pretty basic usual stuff here. But moving on from our body, we've got our 3-piece maple neck with our rosewood fretboard, and again, real mother of pearl inlays. So if you're ever curious why the Les Paul KM seem to have brighter inlays than all the rest, it's because it's true pearl, just like a Les Paul Custom. But we do not have any fret nibs on this one because it was refretted. So that's great if you wanted to play this thing, because I don't see tons of fret wear. There's a little bit. And if I remember correctly, it was the 8th fret on our 3rd string in here. It needs a spot leveling, but I adjusted the neck to see if that would do it. So I'll have to report back to you guys during the playing demo section to see if that fixed it. Because it was just one dead note. But as is common during a refret process, you change the nut out as well. That's a really highly polished bone one, I believe. That measures 1.68 inches. Increases to 2.06 by the 12th. And these are pretty slim necks, 0.78 first fret neck depth and 0.92 by the 10th. Then I measure a 10-inch fretboard radius on this one. Sometimes they left the factory like that. Other times people change the radius when they do the refret. Now we can move on to the face of the headstock. So one of the screws is missing on the truss rod cover, and usually that means somebody's been toying around in here. It looks like somebody had to add a washer underneath the nut, but it does function very nicely in both directions, but it's something to know about. Here's our special Les Paul KM truss rod cover. The headstock, after I cleaned it, you can definitely notice some dings up here at the top. I don't know if a dog was chewing on it or what's going on. And you've got some edge wear from probably a hanger of some sort would be my guess. Not perfect, but hey, the lacquer has not aged too much, just enough to be cool. And we still have the original Grover tuners on here. All right, freshly strung back up. Yeah, this needs a spot leveling. It's just this fret. It's just a little bit choked and buzzy. Then I noticed it to a minor degree here. So full disclosure, you might want to take it to your favorite guitar tech and have them sand the frets just in a few spots. I don't think you need a complete level recrown because the frets are actually in really good condition. There's just a few spots missed. But flipping over to the back, this is surprisingly clean. This thing's definitely been played if somebody wanted to have it refretted, but they did not have any buttons on their shirt or buckles or anything. Although there might be some minor touch-ups because you can see some sort of a circle pattern right there and it's red in a yellowed spot. And we have some sort of a smudge in the finish right here that was unable to be polished off. And honestly, some of these down here look like they might be touch-ups as well. We'll have to blacklight it to know for sure. But if you can handle some very, very light scratches, I think you'll be happy with this. Now let's dive into our control cavity. It does still have the shielding tin over top of it, and we've got original factory solder joints, so no worries about those T-tops. But all of your pots are dating to the 24th week of 1978, and we've got the original yellow disc capacitors. But hey, this one actually has a ground wire installed. As far as the back plates, they're brown, so at least they got that right. Here's the toggle switch plate, also brown, and the toggle switch itself has that metal shielding plate around it. Another non-59 spec. Then we get a metal output jack plate, but another non-59 spec is the thick binding and the cutaway. We kind of briefly mentioned upon that. And we actually have bursted edges. So you've got yellow sprayed on the side in certain areas. Good old 70s era Gibson. I like it, but if you're going for 59, again, everything's relative on this model. It is cool, but if you're after 59 specs, it's not. Now this neck was so sticky and uncomfortable when I had gotten it. There is an area right here where they have worn through the red. However, what's kind of cool is it's just exposing the maple and it's a bit dirty, so it just kind of matches this. After a nice deep clean and polish, it feels much better. However, it's not as glossy as the body. You can definitely tell there has been clear coat wear to this, but again, Blacklight test will show us that a little bit more. Thankfully, no breaks, cracks, or repairs or other funny business, because sometimes when you replace a nut on a Gibson, you can get some finish checks and cracks. We've got a nice giant honkin' volute here. Got a small ding on the edge. And we get the really nice old vintage milk bottle style Grover tuners. If you don't understand what that is, look at the barrel at the top of the tuner. It looks like a little milk bottle. They're my favorite ones. So this one dates to the 164th day of 1979. Kalamazoo produced number 35. But there is a 000 digit, so it's technically the 36th neck stamped that day. And we get the vertical made in USA stamp. Now it's time for that blacklight test. Yeah, my eyes did not deceive me. That's why it looks so clean. There's been a lot of spot fills here and there, as well as clear coat rub, and pretty much this whole entire bottom edge has had a touch up. It looks good though. But this helps show you some of the side edge wear and rubbed finish. I think this was played a little bit more than the condition necessarily lets on. That makes sense why it was refretted. The other edge actually appears to be fairly clean, all things considered. Just some more edge rub and some drop fills. Whoever did that work did a nice job. But here you can see a lot of sweat absorption on the neck and that clear coat rub that we were talking about, as well as some finish rub. But honestly, I was expecting something much, much worse here. Thankfully, no super touch-ups in our headstock area. Those are the scariest. The body, you know it's mainly just because of cosmetics. Now we can look at the face of the guitar. Everything's glowing the way I would expect to see. No giant touch-ups up here. A little bit of sweat absorption and lacquer rub, but our knobs are beautiful, as is the pickguard and pickups. And our headstock is nice too. Here's the touch-ups and regular lighting. You can definitely tell they didn't get the exact cherry color, but it's close enough. It just looks like surface wear abrasion from a strap rather than a touch-up. But now let's capture the weight, because these are usually kind of heavy. Wow, yeah, 10 pounds, 1 ounce. Let's go ahead, plug this one in, and hear how it sounds. Bridge pickup's really bitey. Whereas the neck is deeper but still articulate. Bright attacking guitar, and I just realized my volume for my neck was on like 4.5. So here's what we were listening to. Now here it is on 10. Tell this one has it. It's got the tone hidden in it. If you're a better player than I am, I can guarantee you're gonna have a fun time with this one. So there we go, a very interesting Gibson Les Paul KM. I would suggest this for a player, maybe not necessarily a collector, unless you want to restore that plate to an original one, or at least an original style, and you don't mind having a couple of touch-ups. But man, this thing's got a really great tone to it. I would highly suggest it. The uncovered pickups definitely adds just a little bit more aggression to your tones, which works really great with this whole Cherry Sunburst kind of Kiss vibes going on here. Factory stock. And the mother of pearl inlays are kind of cool. Now I would suggest probably a full level recrown after playing this, because some really high-end bends catches another high fret right here. It's just a little bit of high frettedness. Like you just saw, I could play this thing perfectly fine at home and you're gonna be fine. But if you're trying to take this out on stage and gig, I'm sure you're going to want to correct those few small frets there, given some minor issues. All right, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed tonight's episode. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys tomorrow on the next one. Take care. And if you're interested in being the next owner of this one, you can find it for sale on my website,